Hello everyone! Again, something a little different for this review video. Going to be talking about a new Dreamcast game, one that's come out here in 2022. It also got a Switch release, and I'll explain why that's relevant soon. Anyway, you might be thinking to yourself, yeah, Beebiss 2, that's a weird name. Don't even remember the first one. Well, that's where the story gets a little bit interesting. Well, it does for me anyway. If you're into your lost media, especially gaming lost media, this isn't going to be anything new, but let's give it a little rundown. Back in 1989, an advert for a mailing game service called Play It Again listed a game available called Yeah Beebiss 1. Apparently it was a title in their system. The magazine in question that run the ad was Video Games and Computer Entertainment Magazine. Damn it, that's a mouthful to say. Anyway, since this advert, people have been trying to track down this game and see if it was actually a placeholder name or a legitimate release or cancelled game that never got off the ground. Strangely, this advert kept popping up for a few months, and it continued to baffle people. Not only did it appear here though, it popped up in adverts from the Fun Company, but no one's ever come forward with a copy of the game or any documentation to prove it exists. There are many theories about this game though, ranging from a mistranslation of a Japanese game or put in as a kind of plagiarism kind of trap. This is just a brief overview of the mystery though. If you want a more in-depth look at it, there's plenty of videos out there by proper YouTubers who are way better at this than me. So now you must be thinking to yourselves, who makes a sequel to a game that never existed? Well, this guy does. John Rigg'd. You might know him from his many appearances over on the Metal Jesus Rocks channel, but he's actually an avid NES ROM hacker. He usually makes his own hacked NES ROMs and puts them on a cart and sells them at conventions. But strangely, even though his face is all over this, and it is technically his game that he's helped to come up with the ideas for, it was actually programmed by Mega Cat Studios, and even in videos he said himself that 98% of this game is Mega Cat Studios, the rest just being him. But still, why create this? My guess is probably just for the meme status, or just his love of obscure video game history. The question on everyone's lips now though is it any good? Who's this game aimed at? Let's dive into it. I plan to just review the Dreamcast version of this game, as it was the copy supplied to me by Hidden Chest Gaming. No, this isn't a sponsored video, but check them out. Their link is in the description. I originally tried to capture all my footage on the Dreamcast version, but I found out that the Dreamcast just wasn't going to play ball, so I did the next best thing and bought the Switch version for easy footage. At least this way we can talk about and compare both versions, I guess. So let's start with the Dreamcast version. I do have a little bit of footage recorded by pointing the camera at the screen old school style, but this was just so I could show how the game sets up and boots fine on a PAL or NTSC system without any modification. When the game starts, since it's just a NES game running under an emulator, it will configure the settings for the emulator and save them to your VMU. After that, you just play the game like normal. When playing the game on the Dreamcast, you must be playing with the D-pad for movement, as the analog stick engages frame skip mode, which speeds the game up by a maximum of 2 times. You can see your current speed selection on the VMU screen. Here you can also use the left trigger to toggle which of the 2 usable face buttons you want to turbo. These being the fire and jump settings, I recommend leaving it on the fire, because if you accidentally put it to jump, your character will just keep jumping continuously with no height whatsoever and make the game almost unplayable. When I first started playing the game, I accidentally kept toggling this on and just thinking it was a bug and that there was something wrong with the game. From what I could see, the Switch version doesn't have any of these frame skip or turbo options. Holding the fire button on the Switch is always turboed no matter what. Well, how would I describe this game? Simply, all I can say is like an early black box NES game. It's a single screen adventure where you kill a certain number of enemies in a wave to progress to the next level. The stages are timed, but when you know what you're doing, this is a pretty generous time limit. Every 10th level you'll have to fight a boss, but he's a static mass of God knows what that just floats in the middle of the screen. He goes down with very little effort. And let's talk about levels. There's 100 of them you have to conquer before you see the fabled congratulations screen. Don't worry though, if you die at any time, it just resets your score. You have unlimited continues, and you can take 5 hits per stage before you lose a life. Every time you start a stage, it resets you to 5 hits as well. Well, saying there's 100 levels is a bit of a stretch. It's actually just 10, but they repeat themselves 10 times. After every increment of 10, the colour palette will change. I couldn't see any real ramp up of difficulty or anything at all though. Here's a quick run through of all the different colour palettes. I thought I'd better check in that ending screen too. You can play the game using one of 2 characters, Kyonshi Hyu or Jiangshi Bo. Sorry if I butchered those pronunciations. But both play almost identically, but one shoots what looks like lightning and the other circular pulses. Neither of them have a range further than about a foot in front of their face, so basically you have to run up and rub on enemies before they're defeated. Luckily, none of them take many hits, and you'll be knocking them off the screen with ease. When it comes to enemies though, there isn't much variety. They're these big floating devil heads which are your main enemy. I think there might be a more powerful pinker variant, but I couldn't really tell. The devil heads can also spit this weird green goo at you and it lands on the floor, but I only saw this a handful of times in the 100 levels. There's also these weird green dragon seahorse looking things that extend what I hope is their tail to damage you. Some stages feature this weird floating eyeball thing. It doesn't actually count as an enemy you have to kill, it's more of an obstacle that just gets in your way. And finally there's the big gelatinous boss mound. He just floats there though, and you have to jump and zap him in one of his many eyes. He does have help though from standard enemies that just wander across the bottom of the screen. He can also cause these like tentacle things to come out of the ground and hurt you, but it's all very easily dodged. The game does include some power-ups though to help you in your battle against evil. There's a 15-second bonus that will add to your timer. It did take me a while to realise I had to collect it though to use it. I just thought it was telling me I gained an extra 15 seconds every time. There's also a potion which grants invincibility, and there's a clock which will stop time, but these are only good if there's plenty of enemies on screen. If you only had one enemy, you'll be waiting around for a bit of the time to resume so more enemies can spawn. A power-up's not your only help. You can get aid from a second player. I don't think my girlfriend appreciated me roping her in to play this mode, but I had to give it a shot. It seems like the standard game, but with just 2 people playing. If one player loses all their lives though, you have to wait until you've both lost all your lives and get to a continue to spawn back. The music isn't anything to write home about either. I'm pretty sure it's all just chiptune renditions of classical music. The one I recognise the most being In the Hall of the Mountain King, which I only really associate with Alton Towers as it was drilled into my head from the adverts of the theme park growing up. Sadly, this is all the game has to offer. It would have been better with more stages which didn't repeat so much, but it's running on old school gaming principles and it needs to justify its price tag, which to be honest isn't too steep. In the UK, the physical Dreamcast version will set you back about £10, and the Switch version to download is only about £8. So again, who is this for? I can see the few people who are still into games such as Flicky or Ice Climbers might have a short burst of enjoyment from it, but then again, those aren't the kind of games that are just bringing in the big crowds. I didn't hate going through the 100 levels, and I'm happy to say I've done it, but I don't think it'll be a regular staple in my gaming time. It's a kind of one and done game. Even with the 100 levels though, it only took me about 2 hours to complete. I did find around about level 50 on the Switch version, the game started to struggle, and at some points it had about a 1 second delay on the controls. I didn't find this issue on the Dreamcast version, but accidentally changing the emulator settings so often just got to me, and I would suggest playing the Switch version. On the Switch it's also presented with a nice border around the outside, where the Dreamcast version seemed like it was stretched to 16:9 and I couldn't do much about that. There may be an option to change it on the Dreamcast, but I couldn't find it. I'm not sure if this is due to me playing it over VGA as well, but that's the only cable I had at the time. On the Switch there's a few other tricks up its sleeve as well. There's cleaner menus, a sound test, digital manual, box and artwork scans, and there's an option to turn on a CRT filter. Since the Dreamcast version is running through a NES emulator, you can press the right trigger and either B or Y to bring up a save state menu. Luckily this means you don't have to tackle the centurion of levels in a oneer, but I couldn't find any way to save on the Switch, but I could be wrong. The Dreamcast version of this game is published by Wave Gaming Studios. If you see their catalogue of games, I'd recommend going for another one over this, but the other ones do come with a higher price tag, but they offer better, fuller experiences. I can see this game one day being included on one of the carts for something like the Evercade, much like Flea has been in the past. There is actually a physical NES cart available of this as well from Mega Cat Studios. These guys did have a hand in programming the title too. Do I recommend this game? It's hard to say. It's a very niche title which may not appeal to many. If you like going for high scores and the simpler NES titles, why not? Just go for it. If you're looking for a deep NES Zelda style experience, steer clear. Let me know down in the comments below if you've ever played this and what you thought of it. Would love to hear what everyone has to say. And yet again, any constructive criticism is welcome. I'm not very good at doing these reviews, but I do enjoy it, so there's going to be more. I'm sorry. And with that, have fun people.